people get in. We are on AirMeet, and we are also going live um, on LinkedIn. So you will be able to join from both places. For questions and interaction, we will use AirMeet. Guys, Todd, Diana, where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Stockholm. Is as great as you can imagine.
Uh-huh.
We were hoping for spring, but we're still getting this winter vibes.
I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I can appreciate that because we're kind of we're getting the same vibes right now.
Great. Let's hope our own happiness and good energy will revive this thing.
Yeah, in Krakow it's amazing. It's very sunny, so I'm
you guys.
Yeah, I'm also preparing for the weekend. I'm going to some air balloon festival in the mountains here next to Krakow, so that should be fun. Guys, where are you guys joining us from? You can just put it in so we know. Okay, so Diana, Todd, before we jump into the presentation, even though I have a slide about you folks, maybe let's give the audience a bit of an intro. Who we have the pleasure to spend this virtual event with. So, Diana, Todd, any of you?
I can jump in.
Please.
Diana, plugging in from Stockholm. 15 years experience in marketing. I've done it from every type of different side. I've been in creative agencies, I've been in management consulting, and in my last role, I led a marketing department at a SaaS company. I realized that not only did my company made a few strange mistakes, but they're kind of what happens all over the industry. So I've started my own thing, and now I specialize on positioning, brand, and creative for SaaS companies.
Neat. You also worked for Accenture and some big corporates, right?
I'm honestly more proud for working for the top 10 biggest ad agencies in the world, but we don't seem to talk about it in tech. So I'm going to tone it down a bit.
Thank you, Diana. Todd?
Yeah, so my background is primarily in YouTube. Before getting into B2B SaaS, I was a YouTube creator for 10 years, built a channel that got 9 million monthly views, about 700,000 subscribers, and then decided to move into B2B tech and kind of take what I've learned from creating content on social channels and doing the whole influencer thing into B2B SaaS marketing. So now I'm the head of audience at Audience Plus, or audience marketing at Audience Plus. And we're building out the media engine there and helping other companies do the same.
Neat. By the way, you have in the background the T-shirt. Is that like hockey or American football?
I've got a couple. So back there, that's hockey. That's a Pens jersey, and then these other ones.
Show us. Can you take it and show us like closer look?
I can give it a go. Yeah, this is.
It's easier to.
This is from 2003, maybe. So like the marquee name on here somewhere is Mario Lemieux.
Famous guy. I have no idea about hockey or like American football.
Yeah, he's one of the greats. So
nice. So like the Messi of the space, right? Great. So let me share the screen, do a small intro. So what we will do is that I will do some small intro on the topic, and then Diana, you will share your screen and you will rock and roll on positioning, and then we go with Todd. Okay, so Diana, you need to help me here just to tell me if you can see my screen, because
yes, it's all good.
Okay, super. Okay, guys, so welcome. We will talk about this forefront when it comes to growth and profitability, and how CMOs can influence that. So some housekeeping before we get started. Don't worry, we will email you the slides. You will have the recording. Plus, maybe we will share with you a small survey just to tell us how we did. So today's agenda, I will look into a bit the top priorities and challenges from some research that that we did, like some third-party data out there. Then Diana will tell us about positioning and why that matters and how to build it. Then Todd, obviously, after positioning, it's how we build that actual content machine. And I will put it all together in how we can actually do it in ABM programs. I will just show you some of our approach when it comes to strategy, just to understand it better. And then we put a Q&A, right? So this is me, this is Todd, this is Diana. Now, just to understand a bit what's the whole evolution of CMO is that, yeah, we went from PR initially as a marketing manager, you know, with the old school advertising and press releases, to brand, and now going into profitability and growth and top line metrics. So as technology evolved, we went into these more trackable metrics, right? And what we see that today, the priorities of the CMO, and these are some surveys and some data that we took from different papers. We can see that it's obviously a huge change when it comes to 2023 and for obvious reasons, the uncertainty in the market tells us, hey, CMOs, bring on the growth, bring on the customer experience, and more efficiency, please. Less innovation these days because we need to make cash. The P&L doesn't look very good. And less integrations. So growth is the name of the game. When we look at revising the tech stack, the same digital connection report looks at interesting things. And I will try to go faster here, but we are asking CMOs to be a bit techier and to look at technology strategies, to look a little bit into data, to look at tech stack. So basically, from PR and branding type of metrics into more techie metrics, let's put it this way. And good old Gartner, you know, how I look at these companies, if they produce good data and stuff, I look at their stock price, and Gartner is going up in their stock price, so I tend to trust them. But it's obvious that again, there is a lot of discussion about simple, do more with less. That's the message here at the end of the day. So the challenges when it comes to from the Pulp Fiction movie, the ROI thing, it's like, it's tricky because we are talking about ROI all the time, but only 54% of the CMOs strongly agree that the value of marketing is actually understood, and everybody is you know, asking for that ROI. But marketing, and CMO thingy is a little bit longer game here. It's like Gary Vaynerchuk said famously long time ago, like, can you put an ROI on your mother? You cannot really, but you love her because she raised you and she feed you and she cares about you and so on and so forth. But you don't put an ROI on that. So it's a debate here, but yeah, that's a big one. Nowadays we need to prove that, but again, do we put an ROI on the mother? Not really. Okay, obviously competition, and obviously do more with less. That's like PwC, quite smart guys, much smarter than we are. So I tend to trust them. Now, this is where we are. And the biggest challenge now is, in this situation, how do we position ourselves, right? So what do we do? And I think Diana will have a hard time here to tell us how to position, but she's an expert in that. I would not be able to do it as well as she would do it, especially with all these challenges and priorities. So Diana, tell us how to do the whole positioning part. And if there are questions and stuff, guys, you can put them in. 𝐏𝐚𝐬𝐢 has this awesome feature with the Q&A, so you can put the Q&A there. People can upvote the question. I will also try to look into LinkedIn, because there we have also questions. But Diana, let's see your slides.
Awesome. I'm jumping in. Really excited to share this with you. Let me know when you can see my slides.
Good. You can see
There
the
we go.
PDF. Yeah, you can go maybe in. Yes, perfect. It's all good.
Awesome. Everything good? All right. I'm excited to get started because I'm not sure anybody on this call really knows maybe what to expect and what is this magic thing about positioning. But I don't think it's magic. I think there's art and there's science to it. And I will be focusing a lot on the sciencey bit, because that's sort of not what's trendy on LinkedIn these days. And that's the bit that I'm trying to bring to the table. My name is Diana. I introduced myself already. I focus on brand and creative, but in a strategic part, specifically for B2B SaaS, due to my past experience running a SaaS department. However, if you are in B2B, but not SaaS, all the art and all the science bits will still resonate with you. Maybe my story is less so, but I'm 99% certain that you will still find this useful. A little bit more about who I am. Yes, we've already listed, we've thrown around the big four, the Accenture, Deloitte. I am way more proud of having worked at the most creative advertising agencies in the world that are also listed there. And I think the fact that we in tech might not recognize them is exactly the reason why this talk might be useful to you. People like to brag, right, and put medals or badges, whatever. But the reason I've put those two specific logos on my slides is because I do believe they're much more valuable than some sort of LinkedIn top voice badge that everybody seems to showcase these days. I have received an effectiveness award for one of the campaigns that I've worked on, and it's judged by a very thorough body, Institute of Practitioners in Advertising. So I am the nerdy one, and that knows what it's talking about, what I'm talking about when it comes to effectiveness. And I also have been published in AdMap, big global monthly magazine that's focused on marketing trends and figuring out what works. You might have figured out we will look a lot at what actually works in marketing. So let's jump in. My thing is that there is a lot of people calling themselves marketeers. There are a lot of growth people, but I sort of differentiate myself on being evidence-based, because that's not at all a given, sadly, in our industry. What does that mean? So here's a slide. Here's a bunch of words. All of these institutes, a lot of them are institutes, I use as sources for the kind of science bit that I'm going to present. And if you have not encountered one or two or even most of them, that's really good, because you will find this talk very valuable, and hopefully it will be eye-opening and shift your mindset a little bit in terms of how to approach marketing in your own organization. So let's get started. My talk will have three sort of specific areas. First, we're going to talk about what the hell is positioning, and most importantly, what it isn't. And I'm going to look at what's currently happening in B2B marketing and tell you what marketing science says about the validity of it all. You might be surprised. I think you will be. of course, I'm not just going to abandon you with all the analysis without a plan. I'm going to tell you how we can get out of this and how to move forward. So we're going to look at what are the norms in the market and what's getting in the way of progress. And then I'm going to sort of empower you or inspire you a little bit how you can get started with all of this today. I want to make sure that you get to results quicker, that you are at the forefront of profitability for your company. So I'm going to give you some proven strategies, some silly hacks from me, and show you some real cases that I've worked on recently that will hopefully help it click in your brain so that you leave this call excited and ready to move forward. So let's dive in. Oh, positioning, right? Here's a common messaging strategy that I see in B2B SaaS. I think you will agree with me that it's very common because it's on literally every website. It's on every LinkedIn company page. It's on every single banner ad that you see. And here, it's a feature dump. You'll see that the meme, yes, there will be a lot of memes in this presentation. If you weren't ready, now you are. The messaging strategy is what I'm talking about, but I've also seen the feature dump as the solid, holistic marketing strategy, as ridiculous as it sounds, and even as an entire go-to-market strategy. Just because, you know, when it comes to growing at a fast pace, people really convolute one with the other, and it all becomes attached to this focus on feature rather than what the customer segment is that we're trying to capture or what they need. Hopefully you and I are on the same page regarding the fact that that is not the way to do marketing. So let's look at some better ones. Here's another strategy that I see. It's a little bit more advanced. I see it from most CMOs or VPs of marketing that I work with in my position right now. And it's this wonderful, slightly naive, very optimistic assumption that they will win on product differentiation. Of course, they're looking for there to be some sort of elusive feature or features that nobody has out of their current competition, and obviously they can't build in any decent period of time. I thought so too when I started my previous role running a marketing department. So here's a story from me. My marketer brain also tried to figure out what that USP might be, so that we could differentiate on features. But I really quickly realized that most competitors actually have the same roadmap, plus minus a quarter. How did I realize that? I literally mapped top 5 competitors. I've figured out when certain feature was launched for each and every single one of them. They really were moving 2-3 months each way. But what's interesting is the buying cycle is actually way longer than that. If you are an ERP system, they'll can be up to, I guess, 18 months. Well, I don't guess, I know. If you're on payments, it's 6 to 9 months because you still need to consider every single integration and make sure that it doesn't jeopardize you during the times when, you know, it's very important for you to have payments in your store running properly. So if the roadmap differences are not there, really, they're aligned quarter by quarter, but the buying cycle is 3, 4, 5, or 6 quarters, it's very unlikely that somebody will be chosen based on a feature. In my simplistic terms, the math ain't mathin'. And as you can tell, I really overthought this thing. It kept me awake at night, and that's why I'm really keen to share it with you. But it's not just me that thinks this way. Obviously, that's not science, right? Unfortunately, only for the CMOs, but very fortunately for you, because you're on this call, so you're going to hear the truth. The science that is available to us also supports this. There is a marketing effectiveness research company called System 1, and they tested almost 2,000 ads in B2B. 75% of them were not fit to drive any sort of long-term growth. And as you and I probably can agree, most of these ads from B2B companies are focused on specific features. So that's bad news for the CMOs who still go with this strategy. Very good news for you, because now you know that you probably shouldn't. But maybe there's hope. Maybe there's another really sophisticated strategy that marketing leaders all over the world are using right now. And there's one, it's seen as a no-brainer. I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this call, you will think it's absolute blasphemy that I might want to challenge that. But it's obviously finding your ICP and marketing towards them. Common sense and logic would say that if you market towards them, then more of them will buy you than any other non-ICP type audience. Science disagrees. Sorry for being so blunt, but I just have to be. I know this table is quite small. I honestly have just put it there to intimidate you. You don't have to read it, but I'll tell you the story behind it. For credibility, it was a study run by the B2B Institute of LinkedIn. Yes, those people who want you to spend money on their platform, your advertising money, and another institute focused on marketing science. And what they saw is here, regardless of the company's positioning and who they try to target, B2B customer bases actually look very similar, kind of the same. They made it a law. They called it the law of brand user profiles. See, I'm getting really nerdy here. And because you probably think, what is this, Diana? There are dozens of books written about the importance of ICP and how are we going to live without it? I'm just going to say that there's this other dude that would like to also underline this point to you. So it's not alone. I'm not alone in this, and you can't just burn me on a stake like a witch. This guy ran the B2B Institute on LinkedIn, and he also confirms that ICP is basically something that marketers kind of have invented for themselves to give themselves this false sense of control. But your ICP is actually anyone who will buy your category. And this applies for every SaaS category, and it's not an opinion and it's not a debate. It's kind of a law. So I wanted to kind of make sure that I pause here a little bit and let that sink in, because like I said, it probably goes against a lot of the common sense knowledge, which isn't actually common sense because it's wrong, that you might encounter when it comes to B2B marketing, especially if you just keep flicking through LinkedIn and absorbing it as the truth. But I really wanted to ensure that you get this point. So that's really nice, but what the hell is positioning? I didn't just come here to ruin all your hopes and dreams when it comes to good B2B marketing. I do come with solutions too. So if positioning is not about targeting a specific sort of category of people, it is about how you want to be perceived based on obviously what you say and how you act, which is how we perceive each other as humans too. And I don't know if you've noticed, but this sounds surprisingly like a brand, right? That is how we often define brands as well. It's what you say and how you act, and therefore how one is perceived as a company or as a drink or whatever. So where do we go from here? Well, this whole focus on brand is not as random as you may think. There's another study. This one is by Bain. Everybody knows Bain. And they concluded that 81% of B2B buyers just buy the brand that comes to mind on day one. Strange phrasing, right? Comes to mind on day one. What the hell does that mean? So here's your no less strange chart, I guess. Let me explain. So another statistic sort of that I think as B2B marketers have bumped into a lot is that only 5% of B2B buyers are actually marketed at any one time. Rumor has it right now it's like between 1 and 3 because of the economic situation. And honestly, when so many people are being laid off, who's going to make such a big decision? Right? But the main point here is that 95% of the market don't really have a need for your product, don't really want to know about your solution, and definitely don't want to hear the details about it. And the truth is, those 95% are the people that you need to appeal to be in the subset of brands that come to mind on day one. So it's a much more longer term strategy of getting on somebody's radar before they're even in the sort of in the process of coming up with a consideration set. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, the thing that I often see in B2B marketing is that we're very keen to talk about features which, as we have spoken about before, may not or are unlikely to be real differentiators. And I wanted to relate to you this kind of as a human level. If you're not in the market, this is a very good sort of subtext to this, and you meet a stranger in a bar, you talk about neutral things like the weather, or I don't know, the peanuts are not tasty, or the music is great or too loud, or whatever. You don't go and ask them for commitment. You don't ask them to marry you. If somebody does, they are a psychopath, so you ideally run, right? But that's what B2B SaaS kind of does. A lot of the time, we're shoving features into people's faces. The people who are not even in the market have no clue about your category or vertical a lot of the time, and really didn't ask to hear from you. And that's where we kind of end up with common problems around B2B marketing today. So we've talked about, sorry, hello. Yeah.
Yeah, Carl was asking if for a seasonal services, then you should still focus on marketing all year around to build awareness and to be top of mind, right? So that's the conclusion.
Yes, that's correct. On many parts. One part is the fact that, yes, you need to be there before you're actually needed. But the second part is, if you're a seasonal service and you're going to start panicking about it approximately a month or a quarter before you're needed, then that's what your competitors, who are obviously wrong, going to do. And if you're going to put any money into ads, it's going to be way more expensive. So there are two reasons to do that. Yes.
Cool.
Shall I continue, or any other questions?
Yeah, please.
So I gave you a lot of disappointments just now, and I'm really self-aware about this, right? But don't you worry. The other 2/3 of the presentation are going to be much more uplifting and hopefully inspiring, because I'm going to tell you where we can go from there. Since we figured out that positioning isn't doing things that are wrong in B2B marketing today, but actually figuring out what's your point of view and what do you tell people, then let's figure out how to how to tell the right things to the market. Let's look at the norms and what's getting in the way of progress. So here's what I hear a lot. Well, you can't put ROI on brand. And I believe that's parallels can be drawn with what you guys at Man Digital spoke about earlier in your presentation. Talked about you can't put value on your mother. Gosh, right?
It's hard, but that's how it was put, not by me.
Gary V, I have thoughts, but they're not for this call. But the point is, it's very hard to put ROI on brand. That's what people say, and I disagree. So I'm gonna try and do this for you real fast, and I sincerely hope that you will see what I see. Let's look at logos. We are looking at a bunch of logos from SaaS crypto accounting platforms. They look the same. They use the same colors. It's like a geometry lesson from, I don't know, year 5. It's basically a parade of copycats. If you don't know what they're called, you don't even know what you're going to put into the search bar. Amazing. Okay, let's look at mission statements. Here I've taken CRM providers of different sizes, different sort of focus areas or product ranges, and their mission statements, the real ones. It's a soup of words. I don't know if you're gonna agree with me. It's total buzzword bingo. If I were to ask you to connect the brand with their mission, you would struggle. You definitely have to Google, right? If you care, this this is the solution. But my point is, it's extremely hard to figure out where the hell these companies are going using the words that they say. And now let's talk about visual identity a little bit. As I mentioned before, I worked in SaaS in payments, so payment plugins for e-commerce stores. And this is an actual piece of work that I did. These are visuals from a few of our competitors. I called it as people smiling at screens, sometimes also awkwardly holding them or leaning on screens. But it's absolutely impossible for anybody to name what any of these solutions are based on their visual style. What I'm going towards is trying to prove to you that whether you like it or not, you've got a brand. And if you have a vanilla one, it will cost you more. It's as simple as that. So the CMOs or VPs of marketing who might say, yeah, we don't want to focus on brand or anything like that. I've heard this argument many times. To be fair, they also often assume that it costs them some inordinate amount of money. And I would like to look in the eyes of the agency that made them believe that way. They don't really have a choice, because by not looking at it, they're spending more money. I have some examples for that. Here's another evidence-based statistics. This is by LinkedIn in collaboration with Nielsen. They're looking at what actually matters when it comes to B2B marketing. And you will see that creative at 47% matters way more than media. And they're taking into account everything media related in terms of reach, recency. So it's very budget-driven, or targeting, again, affects the budget. And in reality, being bland is what is killing your budgets, whereas creativity is what makes the budget effective. And this is sort of very contrary thinking for a lot of SaaS marketers specifically. And that's why I would invite you to, I don't know, screen grab this guy or tattoo him on your shoulder or whatever. But CMOs really need to realize that creative freedom is free. You don't need to pay for it. And if you don't have a budget, the way everybody's budgets have been cut in the last few months, probably years now, creative freedom is something that you can really lean on to make the most out of the budget that's left. Another observations that I've had talking to marketing leaders is that they're scared, right? Well, if I'm not following this sort of train of bland logos, vague mission statements, etc., then I need to stand out. So write something very original. And they really worry about being seen for this new idea, that somebody might not like it, haters gonna hate, etc. Luckily, LinkedIn yet again ran a study on that. And what they're saying is that marketers really should worry about being seen way more than about being liked. Invisibility is a much bigger risk. And then the real one, right? There's a certain skill gap between understanding the things that I've just said and maybe even putting a bunch of your competitors' websites together in front of yourself and realizing you all look and sound the same and use the same buzzwords and actually implementing it. And this one I do believe is true. Creative agencies, if anybody has ever worked one, they don't really specialize in growth. They're not quite digitally advanced. They don't understand how to build the right ecosystem, make sure that they are workable on a daily basis. How do I know? I've worked in one. We blacked this. I don't think any single one has actually achieved a good level of doing this work well to please their client. But if you go for a growth agency, then the creativity is not a specialism. I've hired some. I've sat through pitches where that was presented the same banner ads without any conceptual thinking. It's very, very hard to find a growth agency that is able to think in these terms of brand building or top of the funnel development. So this is hard. I empathize with that because I've been on both sides of the story and it sucked. But don't worry, I have a solution for you, and I will sort of try and empower you to get started today rather than getting stuck on this sort of tricky situation where you don't know who can do this work for you, even if you're bought into the idea of actually doing this work. I'm gonna see how tell you how you can get to these results quicker by using proven strategies. Yes, there's more science. Some of my hacks, they're a bit silly, but that's what makes them memorable and easy to use. And some of the real cases with the real clients that I worked on. Let's start with this one. The skill set you actually need is called creative strategy. And they can live in a growth agency. They can live in a creative agency. They can live on their own in their freelance capacity, helping everyone who needs their help. And I'm going to inspire you with some examples of sort of creative strategy. A thing that's really easy to do for probably everybody on this call in a very hands-on way is to de-buzzword their messaging. People say, mine is pretty neat. I don't know what you're talking about. In fact, a CMO told me that a few weeks ago. This person was really certain that they have it tight, that they have it going, that everything is clear on their website. I was kind of shocked when that was implied to me, because I didn't believe that to be the case. And I really struggled. How the hell am I hallucinating? What's the objective way? This isn't science, full disclaimer, but there is a website called 𝐏𝐵𝐵meter.com. And you can put some sentences or paragraphs in, and it will tell you to what extent it's basically bullshit. Unfortunately, for that CMO, whom I will not name, this was the result of their homepage messaging. It blew their index from the scale of 0 to 1 to 1.37. So if you're ever in doubt on whether your messaging is tight, just go there, have a look. In a non-scientific way, but it might give you some sort of impressions about what side of the truth you're on, sort of.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
you love
love
the 𝐏𝐵𝐵 meter?
Yeah. Like, I think it should be done for every email like that you send out, right?
Oh, 100%. It should be done for everything that has ever come out of ChatGPT or many LinkedIn comments these days too. So my advice is to write like a human, because in SaaS, apparently that's really radical. But I think Todd will tell us a little bit more about how to be an actual exciting human when it comes to content. Not ChatGPT. There are a lot of debates right now on whether that's the way to get to really good content quicker. But I'm just going to leave you with the fact that ChatGPT has never made me laugh. It's never given me a conceptual thought. It's never written a provocation that's actually provocative and unexpected. So you kind of need a human to do this work for you. And this is a real example from a company that I worked with recently. Erudit is a Series A company. They are a SaaS solution, HR solution. There are many of them. There are big ones, there are small ones. Yes, they did have their sort of differentiation secret sauce, but it was really hard to communicate because the budgets of their competitors were much bigger. Their vertical could be summarized as HR optimization with people management and enablement platforms. And it sounds as sexy as it feels, or it feels as sexy as it sounds. And we sat there with this word salad that wouldn't be passing 𝐏𝐵𝐵 meter, even on a good day, and try to figure out how do you say it in a way that actually, sticks out and is memorable. It was eventually this idea popped: make your workforce a true force. You actually didn't need to put a lot of other random nouns and synonyms in there. And it stuck. And the reason it did is because it uses play on words. Don't know if that's a pun, but puns work pretty well, or alliteration, because the human brain finds it exciting, and so it saves it in its memory. And that's what you want to be as a brand. You want to be memorable.
Yeah, the headline here is very good. It's like,
yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
it was my fault.
Yeah, they are.
Step 2 is about finding an emotional angle. I don't know why this emoji is so sad in PDF, but in Canva it looked a little bit more happy, I have to say.
Transformation of emoji.
Very well, right? And the reason why we're trying to find an emotional angle is because science. In B2B, emotional ads are 7 times more effective than rational ads. So we do want to make them feel all the feels. Fun fact for you, in B2C, emotional ads are also more effective than rational ones, but not by 7 times, a lot less. So for anybody who tells you that, our stakeholders are really serious and we just need facts to persuade them, they are far more emotional in their work than with their family, which is very strange, but there's a reason for that. I'm gonna use an example of another client of mine. They are the crypto accounting software company. So if you have crypto, you need to pay taxes. Nobody knows, but that's how it is. And they target accountants who also don't know how to do this. And there's B2C element to it as well. But regardless who they target, here is their competitive set. They're all blue because, you know, blue is credibility or something,
Yeah.
I guess, right? On semiotics wheel of marketing meaning. And they all compete on the same claim: done in minutes, done in under 20 minutes. It's like you wouldn't know who's who. And so we sat down, we tried to figure out what's an empathetic copy version of that, and came up with very simple: crypto taxes without the headache, which I think you'll agree is a little bit better than saying crypto taxes in 18 minutes or 19 minutes. Although you could definitely create a fun campaign with that notion of what you could have done with the time you save. The fun fact here is that crypto taxes without the headache actually became a thing that their users now use when they recommend Divly, the platform in question, to each other or write reviews. It's overall very handy to tell people how you want them to talk about you. And if you want some more examples of how to humanize the brand and write with emotion, I would recommend that you look at them on LinkedIn, specifically on the profiles of the people who work at Divly, because even they are quite sort of funny, punny, and endearing in a way where if, say, an accountant wants help, they're more likely to go to Divly than a competitor, purely on just personal affinity.
I would have a proposition for this headline to change it maybe for something a little bolder.
Little broader.
Bolder. Yeah.
Bolder.
Like something like crypto taxes without going to jail, because not so many of us know that we need to actually do accounting for our crypto.
That's a very good point. Actually, you're bringing a really good point, so you're making me tell you more. Well, I think by the time they found the website, they're in the journey where they know that they kind of should do it, right? But we did just submit ads that are going to run, I think, around now, awareness ads to tell people, find us before the tax authorities find you.
Oh, good. I love it.
Talk about bold, right? And
what's the name of this company? We can check. Divly,
Divly. And I think what's interesting with this headline, find us before they find you, if any of these very dry formal competitors had said it, it would feel like a threat. But when your logo has a damn bird on it that's really cute and cuddly looking, and when your entire brand is about helpfulness and empathy, it doesn't sound threatening. It doesn't sound scary. It's kind of just an interesting spin on things, right? But if anybody else has suggestions, I'm sure it would be really cool for Divly also to crowdsource your ideas. And also, yes, you do need to pay taxes on your crypto gains. Didn't know I had to know that as part of my job, but now I do. You're welcome. Don't go to jail. So how do you decide what emotion to tap into? And here's my sort of hack, right? This is what I do in the beginning of every project. People might think that it's not something that feels formal enough to write in a proposal. I literally put it on my proposals. You look at what the people are saying, right? So I go into Google, I put the job function and the word meme, and then I click on images. It can be, most recently I've done CX analytics memes. I've done or HR director memes. But this is about Divly, and this is about taxes. And I think in these two images alone, you will very quickly see that there are some problems with how the hell do you calculate your taxes on crypto. Nobody knows, and the government doesn't tell you either. So suddenly you have a company that solves a real problem. It used to be a headache, and now it's far less of a headache. Memes, use memes. That's my tip for life. Step 3 is about tapping into popular culture. Again, this might seem like such an obvious statement, but there's science. This is really complicated, and again, I just put it there to intimidate you so that you would believe me. But there's been thousands of studies done based on thousands of papers submitted for awards to juries to review. I've written one of them. That's what I was bragging about in the second slide of this presentation. And based on all of this knowledge, Institute of Practitioners in Advertising have concluded that there's one campaign that performs 4 times better than any other. It's called fame. I know it's a bit surprising that it's not called cost cutting or, you know, profitability or whatever. We're better than you.
So
Fame
the
is
the Cristiano Ronaldo ad of Divly, it's in this category of
you know
culture?
what would be a really good example? Yesterday I saw an ad on Stella Artois. It's a beer that is kind of premium. Their tagline used to be, I don't know if it still is, possibly reassuringly expensive. And I think those 2 words say it all. They hired Beckham to promote them, and they did not have Beckham on the billboard. They just had his hand holding the beer, but because he has all of these tattoos on his wrists, you could instantly recognize that it's Beckham.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very clever.
Right. So that they're tapping into fame by not by doing something that's very predictable, but by kind of undermining the famous person there, which I think is very cheeky and powerful. And if you're
but this also proves that, you know, we are in B2B and Stella Artois is more into commercial, but this cryptocurrency or crypto accounting software Divly demonstrates the fact that you know, things can be interesting even if the topic is boring, because let's be honest, like accounting is kind of boring. So you know, to make something funny out of a boring topic, it's like, it's nice. Like, it's the same with software developers or with IT or whatever. They are so boring fields, like, or insurance and stuff like that. So if you can create that, and I think Todd will go into more minutes in a bit of how to build the content and everything. But yeah, it's I love this positioning that you did, Diana. Like, really. I don't know how many slides we have left. Yeah, exactly. And then we can do some Q&A, just quick one here on your presentation.
So points. My point is that you can make any category boring. It's complex often, and yes, you want to be simple but not simplistic. But every category lives within popular culture, and yes, accounting is boring, but you can joke about how it's. I think one of the ideas for Divly, I don't know if I'm allowed to share it, but it was about, like, yes, it's 837th sexiest job in the world. Right. So you can play around with how the world perceives your category in really fun ways. You just need to sort of zoom out a little bit and look at the world around you. I'm gonna jump into this one. So this was the science, fame matters, and it's about tapping into popular culture and things that are relatable. And this actually really interlinks with your previous point. I'm going to give you an example of another client of mine. This is an HR tech company that we spoke about before, right? Make your workforce a true force. And the belief, popular cultural belief is that corporate culture is broken, right? We had quiet quitting. That was a big thing. Now there's a thing called lazy girl jobs, and the Wall Street Journal is writing about it. You have these really heartless layoffs. You have people saying the job is hybrid, but then it's 4 days in the office. Like, it's all a little bit of a scam. And I think this meme to the right 100% proves that that's the feeling of the common folk. So what do you do as an HR company? Well, we tapped into that culture. We wanted to speak to HR because they hold the keys to fixing it, and make them realize that whatever they're doing right now is not really working. We didn't want to tell them, hey, you're doing it wrong. We wanted to provoke them instead and get to admit to it so that they could be curious about, doing better. So I've just put some banner ads for you so that I wouldn't reveal the entirety of the work, but, a headline such as "Pizza parties make me feel valued," said no one ever, right? It starts you thinking about what the hell is corporate culture these days, and why are people not happy, and how can we do better? Or the ad on the right, I always give 100% of work, 70% of it to my side hustle. So if you're an HR professional scrolling through LinkedIn or whatever media of choice, suddenly you bump into this, and whether you like it or not, you stop the scroll and it forces you to go, what the hell? And that's how you get this initial burst of attention in order to get them eventually to remember you, to eventually click on some of your other bottom of the funnel, mid bottom of the funnel content, so that a year down the line, they might become your client. How do you find this cultural truth? Well, social media is a good answer. You'll get these slides afterwards, but here are some of my favorite creators on Instagram. I think they're on TikTok as well. That gives you a very easy way to see what's inside the head of people in these departments that you're selling into. So I'm just summarizing now. Here's a few things that we covered today. What positioning is and what it isn't, where I scared you with this absolutely horrible table, but the purpose of that table was to make you realize that it's not about a feature or not about targeting a super duper niche segment market. It's about figuring out what you actually stand for. We talked about where to go from here, and it's realizing that creative freedom is free. It's not about the battle for budgets, which is still very relevant in 2024. And in terms of getting started today, I got you some silly tools to get you inspired, like the blah blah meter and the memes and the corporate accounts that tell you about the lives of your audience, so that based on that you can build something that really stands out in the market. A lot of marketers say that they're data driven these days, and that's wonderful because it's better to be driven by something than nothing. But to me, basing something on actual marketing science is way superior, and I would just like to draw your attention to that, to really draw that point, drive that point home, that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Other people in marketing advertising have done thousands of studies before you, and it's might be good to rely on them because it gets you to results a lot quicker. Those who dare to be different, there are certain benefits. They finally stop competing on features, which a CEO might be happy to hear. They salespeople who say, I don't believe in marketing, I don't know what they do, they suddenly stop being left on red because they'll get open doors just because people are curious to meet who the hell is behind this company with these campaigns and this brand visual. And they don't have to battle customer inertia quite as much. A lot of the time we compete with another solution or the status quo over a terrible in-house solution. So everything is a risk, and suddenly you're less of a risk because you've been known and you've been on the radar a year or two ago. And if you still think this all sounds a bit weird, I'm in tech, this is not how techies think, well, here's a pretty fundamental, here's a pretty big techie guy who kind of agrees. You can have a great product, but a compelling story is actually what puts the company into motion. So I'm really glad to hear that some people do things this way and are keen on merging the two worlds of marketing and tech and benefiting from the learnings, independent learnings of both. That is me. Open to the Q&A if you want to chat or tell me what memes I should use instead, or give me any suggestions. Here are my details, and you'll get this presentation afterwards as well. So it will be fairly easy for you to know how to get in touch with me.
Great. So guys, stay on the line because we will go directly to Todd's presentation, and then we will have panel and Q&A with Diana. And awesome job, by the way, here from all these people. Philip also, it's rocking and rolling. Lorenz sent the link, so you can go in and check it. So thanks a lot. Todd, let's do this directly from Pittsburgh with
All right.
hockey style.
Let's do this. Let me share my screen.
It's rock
Can everybody
and roll.
see that?
And somebody's a gamer here. Yes.
Indeed. So all right, so today we're gonna talk about how to create memorable content, how to stand out in 2024. So that begs the question. All right, so there is a ton of content out there on social, LinkedIn, websites. So it begs the question, like, how do you create memorable marketing that stands out? Because standing out is 90% of the battle. So before I actually went together and put this presentation together, to Diana's point, I did what most marketers nowadays will do before doing this, and I went to ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT how to create memorable marketing that stands out in 2024. And I want to highlight this because I think this brings up a lot of really good points that you brought up, Deanna. Let's just look at this real quick. It says, know your audience. Okay. I agree with that statement, but it's super generic. It doesn't tell you what to do, which again is half the battle. It says be unique, which we're asking how to stand out. That's basically just a synonym for standing out. Be unique. Tell a story. Okay. Everybody in marketing, I think, can agree that storytelling is a good way to stand out. But like, what does that actually mean? This is generic. Use emotions, same thing. Like, yes, emotions work in marketing, but how do we actually leverage those things to stand out? And finally, keep it simple, which I think everything that this says is super simple, but it's also incredibly generic. So it answers none of our questions on how we actually create memorable marketing and stand out in 2024. So we still beg the question, how do we stand out? I want to do a little role play to kind of prove this point and go through this little story here. So let's all pretend for a moment that we're a Series A AI startup. Most people, if we're talking about like how do we stand out, that's a very crowded category, right? Most people will say you need to niche down, which in many cases, good advice. You need to niche down. But for the sake of this role play, we're going to pretend that we're a Series A AI startup, but we're already niched down. We're helping salespeople write better emails. So that is our category. We have our target. So next thing a lot of marketers will tell you is, okay, we're funded. We have some money. Why don't we outspend the competition on a bunch of paid media? And to a certain extent, paid media is going to work, but from a standing out from the crowd perspective, there's likely bigger people, bigger companies in your category that you just won't be able to outspend. So the question becomes, how do we stand out? The answer is create memorable marketing. And I realize that this is just as generic as all of that stuff that I just showed you from ChatGPT. So how do you create memorable content? Most of you have probably heard the term, just make good content. And if you haven't, you're probably thinking right now, this is genius, right? Like you've been creating content for a decade or more, and all you had to do was ensure that it was good and everything would have worked for you, right? Like mind blown moment right here. Is that what you're open to comments? Like, is anyone actually thinking that? And I know you've all heard this. No. What you're actually thinking is, what the hell does just make good content mean? And now that we're 5 minutes into this presentation and I've showed you absolutely no insights, you may be thinking, wow, I've wasted my time here. But just hang with me. We're gonna get to the insights. So we have to figure out, what does it mean to make good content? Because good is subjective, right? Like good to one person might not be good to another. So me and my marketing colleague Obed Durrani, we came up with a marketing framework for content. And the first part of this framework is defining what does it mean to make good content in B2B? So we broke this down into 3 types. Type 1 is straight up insightful substance. So insightful substance is going to be the foundation for anything that you create in B2B to be deemed good. There has to be some level of insights. Now, type 2 is we take that insightful substance and we deliver it through an interesting format. So I want you to really focus on the word format and not so much interesting, but I'm going to get to that, what that means here in a moment. And then the third type is we take that insightful substance, we deliver it through an interesting format, and we build it on an entertaining concept. So again, kind of generic at this point, but I want to break down exactly what I mean by all 3 of these things. So for insightful substance, what is it? When do we use it? Examples. So we use insightful substance when you have a lot of information that you need to pass along and you don't want to muddy up the waters with, different formats or entertainment or these other things. So like what we're doing on this webinar right now, this would be type 1 insightful substance. We have a slide deck, we're going through it, we're just feeding you the information. Other examples that we see all the time in B2B, the talking head videos that you see on LinkedIn, probably 99% of blog content, and the traditional B2B podcast like interview style where people are sharing insights. This is all type 1 insightful substance, very straightforward. Type 2 is now we build in this interesting format. And I've scoured mainstream media in order to find examples of this that like a lot of people can resonate with. And the best example that I can find is ESPN. So if you're not familiar with ESPN, it's basically the nightly news for the sports world. So their type 1 insightful substance show is their flagship program. It's called Sports Center. It's 2 people sitting behind a desk reading you the news from the day. They give you scores, highlights. It's just reading the news. It's the equivalent to the nightly news that you watch on your cable TV network. Now, this is a 24-hour sports news network. So there's only so many scores or so many highlights that they can show, and they're not going to rerun the same Sports Center episode 24 times during the day. So they have to figure out, how are we going to repeat this information 24 times over the course of the day and people still come back to watch it? So they come up with new and interesting formats to deliver the same information. So the example I have on screen here, it's a show called Pardon the Interruption. They take the exact same news that they talked about on SportsCenter, but instead of just delivering it to you, now they have 2 co-hosts that debate about that news. So the interesting format that we've introduced is these people have different opinions based on what happened during the day in sports. Another one that I don't have on here, but it's also a good example. It's called Around the Horn. They have 4 contestants and a host, and those 4 contestants talk about the news, and the host awards them points based on how he feels like their opinions were. And there's a winner at the end. So they gamify the news. So like all 3 of these things talk about the same thing, but they've introduced different formats in order to keep it interesting. So that's type 2, insightful substance delivered through an interesting format. Now, a lot of people have trouble with this interesting format content because they focus on the word interesting. So I want to give you a couple B2B examples. This is a TikTok that my former COO, Will Allred, did when I was at Lavender, where he talks about how to write better emails. So like in the bottom, you'll see an email that he got. The insights in this video is he's saying, here's what the email was. Here's how I would rewrite it to make it better. And there's a lot of like interesting things popping up on screen to keep your attention. So like you can see like there's animations, there's like captions that pop up. And a lot of people will consider this type 2 because those interesting things used to hold your attention. But this is type 1 because the format has not changed at all. It's talking head. The things that pop up on screen are meant to hold your attention, but there's no format shift. So because there's like interesting things happening does not mean that it's type 2. This would be an example of type 2. So I'll quickly explain what this show was. The idea behind the show was the exact same. We're teaching people how to write better emails. But the way that we introduced an interesting format is that we would take an email that someone within the company got. We would grade it with the tool because Lavender was a tool that graded emails. And then our subject matter expert or host of the show would rewrite that email in 3 minutes or less. And then we would grade his email and choose the winner. And then he would explain, hey, here's why I made the changes that I made, and here's why I got a better score because of it. So same exact idea. We're teaching people how to write better emails, but we gamified the content. We turned it into a competition series. And what we found in our own data is that when we introduce type 2 content like this, people are much more willing to binge watch it. They'll watch multiple episodes in a row. They stay engaged in the individual episode longer than just straight up insightful substance. Now, there's times where insightful substance make more sense, but that's for something else. So now let's get into type 3. This is insightful substance built on an interesting format and delivered through an entertaining concept. Is anybody here familiar with Lavender Joe? This is like a content series / advertising campaign that we did at Lavender. And if for everyone that's not familiar with Lavender Joe, I'm going to play like a 30-second video just so you like understand the concept, and then
I saw this. Yeah.
Then we'll talk about it.
Very good. We don't hear the sound.
You can't hear it?
No, when you share the screen, you need to click on that I have audio or something.
All right, let me
I guess stop. Yeah, there is a toggle there.
Right, I got it. Yeah, let's do this one more time. All right, let's try this one more time.
Hi, I'm looking to grow my network. Care to connect?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Joe. I help my clients 10x the revenue. You want to know how?
Do you want to schedule some time on Monday in the morning or perhaps Tuesday afternoon?
What about Wednesday at 2 p.m. or Friday? The following Monday, we could have lunch, maybe. Thursday, Friday, 2:30, 3.
Okay, so real quick.
Very good.
We're talking about type 3 content here, which I just told you has to be insightful, it has to be delivered through an interesting format, and it has to be entertaining for it to be deemed good in type 3. So real quick, did anybody notice any insights in here? Like when you see this video, is the first thing that you say is, oh, that was insightful? Most people are probably going to say like, absolutely not.
Philip says no.
Yeah, that's totally what I expect. But I want to make a point here that when we go from type 1 to 2 to 3, specifically 3, in order for this content to be effective, the insights cannot be at the forefront. They have to be like buried down deep. And I'm going to show you what they are in a second. But it's important to note, like, if you're trying to create entertaining content, and the first thing you do is like try to give insightful substance, most of the time it's probably going to fail. So the insightful substance here is for the target audience, which is SDRs and AEs that are doing cold outbound. We are showing them how they're perceived when they pitch slap somebody. And I realize that like a lot of you are probably like, well, that's a bit of a stretch when it comes to like actual insights. And that's the whole point here. Like when we're creating entertaining content, there needs to be a purpose, which I'm going to get to in a moment. But the insights are 9 times out of 10 going to be buried pretty deep. So that's the insights of this particular video. The format, and by the way, that's why this video resonates so well with salespeople, because that is a real thing. So the format is we created this character to personify all of these terrible tactics that salespeople use on a day-to-day basis. And then the entertaining concept should have been pretty upfront, which is we use those tactics in real life to demonstrate how ridiculous they are. And this particular one was like a scripted one, but we also did this where he would just go out into the park and use these same tactics on like random unsuspecting people. It was super awkward. So we're going to recap real quick. In order to create memorable content, step 1, it has to be good, right? But we need to define what good is. So to be good, it has to be insightful, and there are many ways that we can deliver those insights. So, but being good is only one part of being memorable. So what's next? What do we have to achieve next? The second part is the content has to resonate. And again, pretty generic. That doesn't tell us anything that we can actually do. So for content to resonate, it needs to have a purpose. And I'm going to tell you exactly what that means in a moment. But before I do that, I want to share a little story. So the way we came to this idea is about 2 years ago at this point. I opened up my calendar on LinkedIn, and I invited anybody on LinkedIn who wanted to schedule 15, 20 minutes to talk about entertaining video, and specifically at the time, TikTok. And I had about 200 people take me up on that offer over the course of about 3 months. And in every single one of those meetings, the first question I asked was why? Like, what is the purpose of this? Why do you want to create entertaining video? And why, or specifically, why do you want to create entertaining video on TikTok? And I got one of 2 answers almost every single time. And those 2 were 1, increase brand awareness, or 2, drive inbound demo requests. Now, the problem with these 2 answers is that they're not a purpose for your content. What these 2 things are is they are the side effect of having a purpose for your content that is successful. So after hearing all of this, second part of this framework is determining what the purpose of your content is. And this is how we break it down. So we feel any purpose or any content that you create should fit into one of these 3 buckets. So we have top-down strategic narrative content, we have middle-out implementation content, and we have bottom-up evangelism content. So to break this down even further, this is essentially 2 parts. Any content that you create, you have to identify the target in which it's meant for. So that's top down, middle out, bottom up in this case. And you have to identify if that group or person becomes a fan of your content, what do you want to happen? And notice I said if they turn into a fan and not if they consume a particular piece of content, because content marketing is a long-term play here. You're not going to achieve any one of these things through any individual piece of content. So this is a long-term play. So let's break this down even more. So top down, the purpose of this content is to drive change in the mindset of your customers' strategic decision makers. So coming back to what I just said, the target that we're trying to hit with this is strategic decision makers within the company. And what we want to achieve is we want to change the way they think about the world to align with how we think about the world. So if they become a fan of our content and they listen or read or watch it over the course of however long, they become a fan of it. That's what we want to happen. But there's a problem with top-down content. And the problem is let's say I create a podcast that's geared towards CMOs, and I'm trying to change the way they think about demand gen. The problem is if a CMO listens to this podcast over the course of a year and they love what I'm talking about, and they go to their director and they say, hey, I love what he's talking about on this podcast, go implement it. The director cannot go listen to that podcast and determine how to execute on that strategy. So we go down one more level and we have what we call middle out implementation. So the purpose of this content is that it bridges the gap between the strategic stuff that we talk about to the decision makers and the people that actually have to go out and implement that content. So this is basically like your how-to content. So in the same example, we could build a roadmap for people to implement whatever strategy we were talking about on the podcast. And for all the companies and teams that are attempting and doing top-down and middle-out content, very few, although there's more now than there was a year ago, are doing bottom-up evangelism content. So the purpose of bottom-up evangelism is to create content that turns current users into diehard fans and non-users into aspiring users. So like this is that Lavender Joe stuff. This is why the insights were not in your face in that video, because the goal is not necessarily to teach you something. The goal is to evangelize you to become a fan of the brand. So there's insights in that. That's what makes it resonate with you, but it's not at the top because it's not the purpose of the content. So we're going to recap again one more time. To make memorable content, it has to be good. To be good, it has to be insightful. There's 3 ways we can deliver those insights. It has to resonate, and for it to resonate, it needs a purpose. But here's the problem. I can make good content that resonates that I forget about a week from now. So like if I ask everyone in this audience, like, hey, what was your favorite LinkedIn post that you read a week ago or even yesterday maybe, you're probably not going to remember it, because while it was good, it may have been good and it may have resonated with you, it wasn't super memorable. So there's a final piece to this puzzle to become memorable. And to be memorable, you need to be known for something. So how many people, if you think of a specific like topic or category, like you have like the person that you think of that is like the expert in that thing. So like I worked at Refine Labs. So like when it comes to demand gen, like Chris Walker is that person for me. Your brand needs to be the same way. When we think of AI sales email tools, Lavender needs to be the first thing that comes to mind. So how do you become known for something? The answer is repetition of all these insights that we've been talking about. But again, as I've been saying this whole time, there's a problem with that. If we consistently repeat ourselves, we get bland, we get boring. People, they start to think like, yes, we've heard this before. Like you're repeating yourself over and over again, and they stop listening, watching, consuming your content because they've heard everything before. So we need to figure out how we can repeat ourselves to become known for that thing without boring our audience. So did anybody notice anything about the examples in this presentation that I used? Oh, wait, I was hoping someone would say no. The common thread in all of these things, and yes, they are series, but in all of these things is that we talk about the exact same thing in every single one, over and over and over. But because we've done it in various ways, we have type 1, insightful substance, we have type 2, where we delivered it through an interesting format, and we have type 3, where we made it entertaining. It allows us to continue to hammer those insights into our audience without them getting bored. And people continue to watch every episode. They remember that content because we've done it in a memorable way. And that's why Lavender's known as the email people. And because they're known as the AI email people, if someone eventually needs that product, Lavender becomes the first one that they think of. And to Deanna's point, like 81, I think the stat was 81% is like the first one you think of is the one you go with. They come inbound to Lavender. And even if they never come inbound, like even if salespeople watch this and they never become a customer, they still refer people because they still watch all of the content and they still refer people that they know are looking for this type of thing. So the trick to creating memorable content in 2024 is using all of these different tools to repeat yourself and become known for the thing. And that's what I got.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Todd. Awesome. So I will just go right into the ABM stuff. And then look, Philip is telling you thanks. Let's put him here. Philip, very active today. Thank you. Thank you. So what I have is how we integrate this into ABM. I want to pick your brain later on because both of you, Diana and Todd, because what I'm feeling is that these SaaS companies that you guys mentioned, also Lavender and the crypto accounting guys or others, are in this mid market, right? So they are not in the necessarily in the enterprise. The average, let's say, ARR for even Lavender is not more than, I don't know, 3K if you have some team of sales. So what I will do, I will talk a bit about more enterprise type of a APM approach. And then I would like to pick your brain a bit of both you, Diana and Todd, and even the audience, of what we learned today, how we could apply it better in a more enterprise higher value type of a deals out there. So I just want to show you some frameworks for now, and then we can think of that. So let me share the screen. Bam. I will use you can see it, right? Diana,
Yeah, we
can
can
you
see
tell
it.
me you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Cool,
good.
cool. Okay. Okay. So the first thing that is critical is obviously audience, but one thing that we find in ABM is that we really need to go in details, like compared to dimension where we are more like focusing on segments. Here we really need to go on actual companies. These are some fake companies out here, but usually we do a list of these companies that are really understanding the ICP. So I will jump and just show you, like, we kind of go in very detail in each and every vertical. We pull out all the details, like, okay, what are those criterias? What are your custom criterias? Was that manual research? If you would target these companies, how would you do that? And then you go also into really understanding, okay, so who are these buying committees, say, right? And as you can see here, I put like this diamond, gold, silver, and bronze. This is also in outbound used, and in advertising, in how you create content, just to understand a little bit the priority and who is who. And in an ABM motion, like, you would really go into details of understanding these personas. For example, here is Carl, and what I did here is I created a persona of the CMO that is into buying, or in a buying group for revenue operations for ABM. So extremely specific, not necessarily just like marketing services or HubSpot services. No, like a company that wants to do RevOps and ABM, right? So I go really in detail to understand what are the initiatives that he's taking in a B2B SaaS company. What are the success factors? Like, I really go in a lot of details, and I take each and every initiatives and I describe it. So I don't want to necessarily scare you that you need to do all this, but in a good good campaign, you really need to know and to be inside of the persona's brain at the end of the day. So like to go inside of this brain and just walk around and really understand how these guys are thinking when it comes to the solutions that you're bringing. So here is the RevOps manager, same story. So we go into his initiatives, success factors, perceived barriers, decision criteria, buying journey, and then you just really go into all the details. And you go into, okay, so you're just trying to understand all these folks that are involved in the buying journey, right? So when I say buying personas, I'm not saying just these things and like few lines that you put, like in an ABM motion where it's a high, it's a lot of different decisions that are to be made, and it's high budgets, and most of the time their jobs are in at stake. So you really need to do your research. And then we do also a hierarchy. This is example only. It's much more complex, but you need to understand who is the decision maker, the champion, the blocker. Like you really need to understand who is who in this buying group and what's the hierarchy, and also understand in a customer journey where you interact the most with them, right? So you really need to, is it like a epiphany, like, oh, I never heard about Monday, and this is the first time I'm hearing about them. So, and who is that person? Usually those are the champions, right? Like, so really understand, because this will, it will be make your life easier when it comes to messaging. And then in a ABM motion, or actually in any campaign, you really need to have a narrative, because things are happening today that are more relevant than, you know, things that happened last year. So usually in a campaign, you really want to focus on these insightful things that Todd was talking about, like what are the shifts in the market today that really matters, and what challenge this makes to our ICPs, and why is that bad for them, right? And you just drill it down and you say, okay, this is why it's bad. So what was the empathic tie-in? Like, why would this persona or this champion really care about this? And what's the impact if they don't make a change, right? What's the solution and value that you're bringing on the table? What's that unique? How is that different? And how is the product integrating into this problem? Like, you need to have this narrative, and then try to choose, okay, this is my narrative thread for this campaign. We are talking specifically campaign. We're not talking about company, what Diana talked about. We assume that you have that made, right? This is like another layer on top of that for that campaign in an ABM motion, right? So then you say, okay, this is my position statement, this is my value, and this is the content chapters, how I can prove to you that I can help you with those things, right? So this can be month 1 or Q1, and then you have like this series, exactly what Todd talked about. Like you structure it into these chapters, and obviously you need to have some reasons to believe, use cases, case studies, testimonials, so on and so forth. Now is Lorian Lipsum here, and then you go in and you say, okay, great. So what ABM, it's very much because we interact with so many buying personas. You need to have like a positioning ladder. Like you really need to understand, okay, what's my market position, what's my point of view, and what are my core capabilities, right? Like that needs to be extremely clear for this particular campaign that you do. But then when you go into value prop, you need to really break it down into what's my value prop to the C-suite, like to the C-level. What's my value prop at the tactical level to the managers and directors? And what's my value prop to operational level to the individual contributors, the guys who will use the tool or the service day to day. So then that needs to be very clear, because this will be in your content, in your emails, in your ads, when you are creating those particular pieces of content, right? Because different people, as we saw, we have different type of content to be made. And then you say, okay, so what are my visual concepts for this? What I will show you, they're just examples, but visual concept needs to be aligned with that chapter or with that content, right? So that you have that series. Like, this is some boring images here that I'm showing you, but as I just want to illustrate it. But you need to have like consistency in terms of how you show them as a visual concept for the audience. So as soon as you have this, you need to think, okay, so what are those hooks, like lead magnets, or how we call them, for this campaign, for this particular ICP, and for this particular buying groups selling this particular product, right? With this positioning ladder. So it needs to be very, very clear. So what we usually do, it's good to do all of them and connect them, but have like a higher complexity, more like a moderate one, and something that is evergreen, right? But here, what you want to do is like really list down, okay, so if I want to do, let's say I do a hybrid event, right? Like I do a hybrid event, this would be the topics that I would take from the series, from the chapter that I'm doing. Again, these enterprise guys, okay, you have ads out there and you have all these digital world, but when you have big deals at stake, an event or a personal touch with them and a more intimate relationship needs to happen. So that's why we are building this idea of events and hybrid events like or virtual like this one, right? So you have these you point these out, but then you need to put them in some programs, right? Like, okay, I have the hooks, but how do I actually what kind of programs do I create for them, right? And again, these programs are aligned with your positioning, with your chapters, with your visuals, and with your hooks. Everything is connected. So obviously you have an awareness. I'm just going through a nurture program, which can be an evergreen one that you're rolling with different tactics. I don't want to go in a lot of details. Again, you will have the recording. And then you go in like post-event or post-launch type of a programs. And yeah, then you're planning the whole media plan. You're looking, okay, how much it costs me. You go out to LinkedIn. You really want to understand that. You do all the organic communication, the social selling. So everything is integrated into that messaging, into that positioning, the chapters that you used, and so on. So next, you do the organic communication plan. I'm sorry, I'm going fast. Then you do the sequencing. So you call the guys from Lavender. You use Lavender as a tool. You create the emails. You have a very clear understanding what these emails are. Maybe you do some advanced sequences where you are reaching out to different personas, because we saw different buying groups within the channel. So you are integrating everything into one campaign, right? So buying journey, to understand which content, which touch point is where. So you look at the channels that you're using and each and every steps. So you can really have a true integrated plan. And then you go into implementation. And this is what I want to point out. Like, the best way to implement it is obviously through sprints. So you might have like a typical ABM campaign, like if it's less than 6 months, it's like most likely it's a light version of ABM, let's put it this way. So they are long because the deals are high, right? So what we do usually is that we put them in sprints. So we put very clearly in different sprints. So we have here a list of all the sprints, all the tactics that you need to do. I don't want to bore you with that because I will send it to you over. But the main message is that content and positioning are foundational. Like, you cannot really go in and do ABM and then figure out your positioning or demand gen. It's not like you replace ABM with that. So what Todd and Diana said is like, you do that, and then when you're ready, you start to do, and you peel the onion even more with the ABM. I hope it makes sense. So now, before we go into the panel, what are those things, Diana, that you believe could work better in a ABM campaign from what you saw in general and this difference, like how do we do the positioning for mid-market versus these more enterprise type of deals?
Yeah, so I'll start with your initial question. I think it's a really thorough framework you have in terms of how to describe personas, their pain points, what success looks like for them, etc. And I think the most crucial thing is to, yes, you need to create the content that answers every single one of them, right? That's the content that they're going to Google for, or when they bump into it, they'll be like, yeah, that's what I've been wondering. But you also want to say something that hasn't been said before, or appeal to some pain point that perhaps exists at a more human level. So I spoke to somebody recently, and I asked, yeah, but what about your decision maker, right? What actually drives them as a human? And this person couldn't answer beyond sort of, well, they need to transport the data from A to B and analyze it in a certain kind of way. Yeah, but like as a person, I think it was forecasting. So SaaS for forecasting. Yes, now I know everything about that too, right? And then we started exploring like what other pain points exist to this human in their workplace. Do they have beef with sales? That's an expression, right? Yes, they're always arguing with sales because the forecast for sales is based on this person's work and it's never credible. It's always over the top, and so they struggle. Are they seen as somebody who sort of just does their work and it's all theoretical and doesn't have any real world application? Yes, 100%. Right? So suddenly, if we were to start writing angles relating to that, the actual pains on a human level that this person in this role experiencing, it will stand out a little bit more. So it's something that you maybe do on top, right, of exactly this really detailed persona-based breakdown, which is what you, Romeo, has shown. And again, if you want to figure out what those are, go into the mind of those people. They post on social. They're in the memes. And it's very easy to actually find out. You know, sales and marketing have problems in their relationship, and that will never be solved. It's such a cliche, but there's more of those very complex organizational opportunities. Like B2B in itself is like a microcosm. Like, dig for that corporate culture. There's a lot of exciting stuff there. So that was sort of my first sort of build maybe of what you've shown. And if somebody has done their positioning work properly, they will come out with these nuggets. Realize that I shouldn't be talking for too long, given there's time. But something about what you were saying, marketing to enterprise clients. A piece of work recently that I've recently seen came to mind. This was by Workday. So they are an ERP system. I can't even explain to you in human non-buzzwordy terms what ERP system does, right? But their marketing director who ran this campaign said the buying cycle is 18 months and they need to stay front of mind and memorable throughout that time. So they wanted to create this vibe of these people get me, right? And make sure that all the stakeholders were covered. So just like you broke it down from CEO to CFO to my other project at the moment, there's CX Insights Manager, very different needs, right? And yet you need to capture all of them. So they needed a campaign that does that. Great, like what a shopping list of requirements. The campaign that they ran was called Rockstars, and it is a play on words, I guess, about the fact that we in corporate safe jobs call each other rock stars for doing our timesheets, right? Is this sort of like, it's nice, it's sad, and a little bit pathetic, right? They did manage to get Ozzy Osbourne and ZZ Top in the ad, which makes it significant. Like, what would Ozzy say? He had to do so much to really become a rock star, right? Now, not everybody has Workday's budget, right? But the idea of play on words and picking up on this corporate, frankly, bullshit, like this is just so ridiculous, but we all do it. That's the humor. That's the core of it. You don't have to have a big production budget. You just have to latch onto something that's already in the culture. So my answer, and I think Andrew Salmon also wrote down a similar thing. What about enterprises? Same, but you have to be even louder. You've got to be memorable for 18 months.
So I think, Todd, I want to ask you about the lavender thing, because for me, like what you guys did with the brand and what was done there, it's just amazing. Like you really talked to the persona. Like that's an example of you really knew the persona, right? But just to challenge it a bit to enterprise, let's say, like when I look at lavender, I say, okay, like these are my perceived barriers, let's say, to implement such things into ABM. Things that I think of. Okay, they are mid-market, low entry point. Like what? You have free trial, you pay $12, you get in, right? It's just email. It's SDR folks, recent grads. They are writing a lot of emails. All they need is some help. They have some sales managers that want to see if they write well. It's a no-brainer. Great tool, all of that. But having this type of this kind of messaging or this type of content would not work for corpos or for hire. Again, I'm challenging it, right, for the sake of it. How do I implement such strategy that you guys did at Lavender in a boring enterprise sales cycle where you sell, I don't know, incredibly boring things to buying personas that can wait. They are not in a hurry, and they really want to do a lot of due diligence, and the budgets are really tight.
I think I'll use my role prior to Lavender as an example here. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of these insights started to happen when I was still working at Refine Labs, which is not enterprise software, but it's not low entry point by any stretch. So we were an agency that dealt with enterprise clients that were paying us anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a month on top of their budget, their spend, their ad spend. So basically the what we did there, and this wasn't an ABM play, but this was still using the idea of different series and different types of content that typically people would not associate with larger ACV deals. Is every week we would have Demand Gen Live, which was our weekly event, webinar, whatever you want to call it, where Chris, our CEO, would talk about a given topic within Demand Gen. So we would have anywhere from 50 to 100 people on a Zoom call every Thursday, and we would talk, record it, release it as podcast. Now, basically every day after that, he would chop that content up for his own personal LinkedIn feed. So because I was on the content team at Refine Labs, I knew what content was coming out in any given week. So let's say Chris is talking about why attribution is broken. Like that's his topic or whatever he was talking about that week. I would then take that exact same topic and I would poke fun at it, whether it was through a skit or I used to do like cut movies up and basically like turn like movie scenes into like whatever the topic was. Pure entertainment. The insights are buried down deep, but the beauty of this was, and we saw this in self-reported attribution all the time. The beauty was the two of those things working together were super effective, because if Chris talked about a topic, or like he had a talking head video on LinkedIn that was 7 to 8 minutes long, you might watch that and you might love it. But if you're watching those things every day, like the nuance starts to disappear a little bit. It kind of starts to run together. Then on the other hand, you see this topic coming out at the same time where I'm using entertainment to either reinforce or poke fun at whatever he was talking about. Now you have the insightful substance like dead in your face over here, and you have this way more like sticky, memorable, like entertaining content over here that makes you remember the insightful substance. So like as we're talking about, we're just talking about enterprise, like you need to be in front of their face for 18 months before they make a decision. The two of these things together are what propel you to the top of their mind. So if you can do it consistently, it's super effective.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what you guys did at the Refine Lab, it's really really good stuff. But um, I will not be able to sleep at night if I don't ask you this. That's great, but what about corpo? Like, if you are in corpo and you are CMO and you have a lot of different approval and chains, how do you manage that? And Diana, you work for Deloitte and Accenture for these guys. Like, let's be honest. I worked also in corpo. I'm coming from DHL and also Swedish company like Electrolux. And believe me, if we needed to do some kind of, any type of external messaging, not even talk about podcast and take those posts and broke it down and do the all cool stuff that Todd did, it would like take me 6 months, like till somebody will give me an approval to do a podcast. Like, papa to that. So how can you be creative in an enterprise sales when you have all these situations? Because here we are talking not only about B2B SaaS and startups, right? Like we enterprise selling to enterprise. Like, makes sense?
I can tackle this one because I can relate to it, not only because I've worked for all these big companies and consulting, so I appreciate how hard it is. In my previous role, I was working within a large corporate who started this sort of SaaS product that became a sort of sub-segment of the company's offering. So whilst we technically had freedom of operation and the agility of processes and our own way of doing things, in theory, in reality, we were still under this big corporate umbrella, which more often got in the way of good work rather than supported the good work. And what helped me when I joined were two things. One was, well, firstly, I don't think anybody should take a job if they think that what they're marketing is boring, right? Like I kind of disagree with you, Romeo, in terms of things are boring. as soon as people are involved, nothing is boring. There's always drama. More than one person is drama. If you think about the movie Office Space, it's like 20, 30 years old now, right? Is fairly boring corporate environment, but boredom can be funny. Boredom can be frustrating. Boredom can drive you crazy. So you got to latch on to those human elements of it, right? So and that's why in my role, when I came in, yeah, payments, freaking who cares about payments? But when I realized the impact of conversion rates on this small medium shop's bottom line, nobody thinks about this connection about a small techie UXy thing and the fact that this person can spend an hour more with their baby, because a lot of them are, you know, during the pandemic, packing boxes, holding a baby and doing customer support themselves. That really inspired me to go out and do the work that I was doing and find a way to talk to them and cut through. So I think if you're in the corporate, you need to figure out why you're there, right? So what's your personal way to relating to your target audience and seeing them on a human level, because humans are never boring. Even the most boring person, they're kind of funny in their boredom, right? And the second thing is many marketers talk about, well, that there has to be budget, right? Like, what's the budget, what's the size of the team? And I think it's much more important to ask for creative freedom. And it's really good to ask for it before you join, because when you ask for it, they don't really know what you mean and where you could take it. So it's much harder to say no, right? But when you come in, you really need to exercise that right for creative freedom, because if you find yourself in a spot where, no, this is the template, and suddenly there are cuts to the budget and you don't have the money, your team is going as well, then the chances of you hitting those marketing goals that you've been set, you don't have any levers to pull, right? You don't have much left. You can optimize your CRM systems day and night, but you just won't get through to people in the right kind of way at the right level. So for me, those would be the two tips. Figure out why it's not boring at the human level and fight for creative freedom. You know, if ERP freaking systems can do it, so can you.
I'll add to the creative freedom thing real quick, because I think a lot of people have the opinion that, like, and I can appreciate this because several years ago now, I worked at a company that, like, posting on LinkedIn was frowned upon because, like, they thought you were looking for a job or something. So I can appreciate that, but the beauty of, like Deanna said, creative freedom is, like, I can prove it out with my personal social media before, and then take that to the brand and say, like, look how well this is working personally, and then fight for it that way before I ever try to, like, you know, pitch it internally with no data behind it. So, and I've done that several times. And the beauty with that is, and in almost all of those lavender examples, everything that we created was done with almost zero budget, with the exception of, like, the time of people involved. And we proved it out to see if the concept resonated with people. And if the concept resonated, then we would go back and we would decide, is it worth investing more resources in doing this another way, or do we just keep it the same? So that's another beauty of having creators within the company that you can use.
To your point, like, Philip has a question here. I just want to put it here on this on the stage. So the question is about you do all the content stuff. Well, can you rely on organic reach and virality, or is there a big part of distribution to that too? This is for Todd.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of those it depends answers, right? To the point I was just making, like, you're creating the content up front, determining whether it's resonating with the audience. Like, you want to decide if it resonates before you ever start putting, like, big budget behind it. So, like, as you're deciding, like, what the purpose of all of these content pieces or series are, you can decide, like, hey, I want to make this with the idea that if it resonates, we can turn it into ads. Some content that you make just it's not the best format for an ad. Like as an example, like 3-Minute Sales School, like that's not an ad. But over time, he gained fans. He gained people that loved the show, loved the insights. And in that case, we relied on organic reach. In the case of Lavender Joe, the purpose of that was like, hey, this is going to work on both. It's going to work really well on organic. We're going to test it on organic. If people like it, which they did, we turn it into paid media. So I think the answer is it depends.
I agree with that answer, and I think it's about the timeline, right? Within that question, there isn't an element of what is the timeline within which you would need to meet that expectations, and I think it's very important to reserve judgment and decision making for an X amount of time that is given to yourself. You know, if we are LinkedIn creators, I'm sure sometimes you sweat for a whole day on the post and then nothing happens. And what are you going to just say? Well, I'm never going to post again, right? Algorithm might have changed. Todd might have released something super viral. Nobody cares about Diana that day, right? There's so many factors in the universe that could have upset the distribution of my content, that you just need to step away from the feeling, from the emotional part, and just keep going. And I hear that when I speak to some of the creators that I mentioned, TLDV, that are doing excellent work on Instagram and TikTok, educating their audience, never mentioning the product, which is possibly what makes it even more interesting. I spoke to their CEO in terms of how they approached organic social, and he said, allocate an X sum of money, make sure that there's a resource plugging through it, and then just step away, right? Because if you're going to panic, you're going to ruin it. Give it 3 or 6 months and just step away and see what happens. And only then do you make a decision on, is this channel or that channel? Because things can grow in completely different ways on different channels as well.
Yeah, it's debatable for enterprise. Like, for sure, they will not walk away because they have different departments for communication. But yeah, question from me. So if you say about that LinkedIn, how much company page and how much personal employees? And try to think of a mid-market, like the audience you interact with, but please try to think also of a more of a corporate environment also. And let's have, if it's possible, 2 answers for each groups.
Do you want to go first, Todd?
Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but this is again a case of like, it depends, like, and to me, this doesn't matter if you're startup, mid-market, or enterprise. It depends on your content strategy. So there's a lot of enterprise companies that are not going to promote individual employees because they're thinking about like the overall brand. But that doesn't mean that they can't repurpose the insights from individual employees. So like, I think a good example of this is Gong. Gong has they were known for having like a very active company page. But if you go out and you look at, Gong salespeople, there are several of them that have, I don't know exact numbers, but, arguably way more reach than the page does. So like, it's a combination of both, but the beauty is like, the beauty of personal pages is like, as a brand, you don't have to create that content. You just empower the people to create that content themselves. And it doesn't cost you time or budget or additional resources because it's something they're doing on their own. And then you can choose whether it makes sense for your brand or not to, share those employees' content or repurpose the content into the brand voice.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Todd. The Gong example is really relevant here. Thank you.
From my perspective, I'm pretty sure, based on most recent info about the LinkedIn algorithm. It deprioritizes company posts compared to personal posts. Don't take my statement as gospel to verify, but I'm fairly certain of it. I also see that some of the pages sort of that I was on the admin side of, their posts get 23 views when I can get 23,000 views, right? So there's something to be said about that. But I do think it's because as a corporate, you still need to have a tone of voice. You don't, creating content where you just rehash what your competitors are doing or what happened to you is not interesting to me, the potential target audience. It's not going to come through. Even the most obvious product update can be written in a way that is emotional, empathetic, cheeky, sassy, whatever it may be, in terms of, you know, an actual tone of voice that cuts through. So I think it's safer probably right now to have people create the content and the page reposted. But that's sort of my equation based on a bunch of observation. However, a higher level observation is that, let's get real, most people are not good writers, right? I mean, Todd and I are marketing people, and we are writing presentations. I've been writing presentations my whole damn life, right? That's literally my main job. But that allows you to practice sort of public speaking and putting your thoughts together in a coherent way. But most people are not writers. They're outside marketing. Do you really want somebody who is in finance to be writing a post for you? Hopefully a salesperson will be able to do it fairly well. But I mean, I think there is a certain narrative on LinkedIn right now that, oh, we're just going to empower everybody to post and it's all going to be great. So you're going to make people do something that really pushes them out of their comfort zone that they have no skill at, that might end up with very average content that gets no traction. So you're just wasting a bunch of man hours. Also, if you work in a corporate, there's a certain fee that you pay your person per hour. And I'm not sure you're getting good value if all that person is doing with their hours posting on LinkedIn. Cost per mile on LinkedIn right now is $35. I'm just going to leave it at that. Sometimes it's better to just down pay for your reach rather than get a department of, or get 10 or 20 people to try and do something that they have no experience in doing before.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys. Before we end, any final thoughts? Please feel free. Anything. Thought, Diana. Any final thoughts before we close?
I don't think. I mean, thanks for having me.
No.
I thought it was,
okay.
I thought it was really interesting for us to connect because we, even though marketing is marketing, we are coming to it from 3 very different perspectives, right? So I'm that nerdy person with the stats about high-level strategy. God damn it, let's get it right. Todd knows how to actually do it and run an engine with content, which is, you know, something that I can talk about in theory, but and by no means an expert in this level. And Romeo, your slides, oh gosh, that is a very specific skill set to be so granular, right? So I think it tells you that quite often marketers from different parts of marketing sort of debate which way is the right way. And I think the reality is you need to pick a little bit of everything in order to make it right, because you can create a good campaign only when all the boxes are ticked.
Yeah, so I have 2 brothers. One of them is in advertising, like pure advertising. I mean, you know, Nike, Pepsi, banks, whatever. So this type of stuff. And the other one is in employer branding. So it's very interesting to see that, you know, each of it's still marketing, but it's so different in terms of skill sets. Exactly what you said, Diana, at the beginning, right? Like you have that creative guys, but they will not be that you know, metrics and ROI and everything, and you have the growth guys who will not have necessarily that creative part. So I think having really understanding your business model and understanding the actual sales cycle that you're having, understanding really well the market, understanding really well the buying persona. This is what can give you the recipe to, okay, what is the go-to market, and what exactly, what are the skills that you need. So having that competency metrics, and even if it sounds really boring and um, or not that sexy, but having a skill and competency metrics to really understand what type of marketeers do I need for my business to bring that profitability and growth, because that's what we are talking now in 2024. So my final thoughts will be this: like, really understand the market, really understand what that market needs and what type of skills it requires, and like, don't move don't move into huge investments. You don't have very clear positioning, as what Diana mentioned. Like, really, like, that's like foundational, like, if you cannot go skiing or biking or even hockey before you walk, right? You really need to do that well. And Diana mentioned the positioning side here and the value prop and all of that. And when it comes to content and demand gen, that's like, whatever company and whatever stage you are, you need to do demand gen. Like, there's a no-brainer, right? Like, so these two things need to happen, and only after these things are happening, then you put then the layer of, okay, maybe I do outbound also, or maybe I do ads, maybe I do ABM, and so on. But demand gen and clear positioning and very good copy and those sexy headlines that Diana showed us, that's like, it's no brainer. It needs to be basic, right? So I hope that all of you got a lot of insights from these 2 hours. I learned a lot. Like, I really learned a lot. Great presentation, Diana and Todd. Like, those memes and those funny series with Lavender, and these are the things why I love doing what I do, because I meet great people like you folks. Thank you again. Thank you for joining. Also, you guys, like, there was a lot of interaction here. Like, Arek put this all together. That was really great from him. So thanks a lot for that. And the audience, like Andrew, I don't know, like, you had also some fans. Diana here, I see that you had people who wanted screenshots with you, like, and so on. So, like,
New level of
great
fame.
exactly. Thanks a lot again, and see you next time. Ciao. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.